Good morning, and welcome to the Art of the Americas, a focus on the Dakota and the Anishnaabe. Oki, hello, and I do welcome you to the Minneapolis Institute of Art, also known as MIA. My name is Marne, and I am pleased that you are joining me today to experience the beauty of the Americas galleries. A few brief words. MIA houses more than 90,000 objects of art. MIA's art spans cultural traditions that are as diverse as they are global. The entire collection comprises art covering over 5,000 plus years, and it was founded in 1883. Most important is to remember that MIA is situated on the traditional land of the Dakota. They acknowledge that the people are still here, as the elders say, and it is art that is respectful of the past, mindful of the present, and aware of the future. Today's virtual tour focuses on a selection of work created by Minnesota's Dakota and Anishnaabe people. We will look at differences and also similarities. There are four key themes expressed and artistic approaches used, and I'm just going to speak a little bit about each one. Well, most important are the spiritual worlds that are all around us. The cosmic visions of Native peoples are significantly diverse. There are several characteristics, though, that stand out. It is common to envision the creative process as a form of thought, and as there are many thoughts, it allows for individual and also collective creation. The process involves both the ancestors, the living, and who are part of the natural world. This be the animals, the land, the water, and the air. The most important point, though, is together, these visions are seen as a living process in which there is a kinship existing between all. Everyone and everything is part of it all. Well, yes, we have the spirit worlds, but we also have the natural world. And the natural world is not separated from the spiritual one. That's important. The natural world is embraced, it's cared for, it's respected, it's shared, and it's understood to be part of one's everyday existence. Nature is the foundation from which all life and spirit is built on. Its beauty is reflective of how one's emotions permeate one's existence, seen through daily rituals, religion, and food. There is a deep reverence for nature, as the belief is that it is absolutely vital to one's understanding and way of living. And I think we can all agree that as we are just one of many and we are connected. Now, in terms of artistic approaches, we have the classically traditional, and that really focuses on the intricacies of how one originally, in a sense, did work. I think we could begin with quill work, which led into beadwork. Both are extremely time intensive. They're complicated, yet incredibly delicate, and they require years of practice to truly become masterful. They're either used ornamentally on clothing, or they are used for ceremonial purposes, because both allow an artist to express their vision and their view of both worlds. There is also woodwork and hide work and eventually cloth, where one was using them in a more utilitarian fashion. And this did not mean that a bowl, a spoon, a shirt, or a moccasin is, well, quickly made and not much care is given. Quite the opposite. Much care was placed in the creation of these objects, as they showed the respect for the owner and also the maker. And depending on the design, the purpose of use or the purposeful ideation placed on the making showed what spiritual messages would be imbued in that work. And finally, we come to New Modernism. And by New Modernism, I refer to the tossing aside of convention and representation. Today's artists have moved into looking at creating work where perspective and color and composition is no longer representational. They sometimes work in specific movements that have been such as Cubism, Dadaism, Surrealism, Futurism, mostly abstract expressionism. However, what ties most of this modernist approach together is the desire to break away from the obvious, which would be pure representationalism. So with that, we are going to move to the first original peoples. Well, you know, there is a river that runs through the Twin Cities and runs through Minnesota. This is Owamni Yumni. The only true waterfall of the Mississippi is known by the Dakota as Owamni Yumni, which means falling water or whirlpool. It's revered as a place of great spiritual power and inspiration, and it is where many gather to trade, rest, and meet one's relative, a real gathering place. For the Anishnaabe, the waterfall was called Gababika, and I apologize if the pronunciation is not totally correct. Both the Dakota and the Anishnaabe and other indigenous people saw this place as one of coming together, a safe place and one of healing. Mia recognizes the significance of this coming together and the gathering together and the sharing of the stories, and celebrates the art created by Minnesota's original peoples. We begin with a few selections of the Dakota decorative arts. The Minnesota Dakota are the Mdewakanton, Wahpeton, Wapakute, and Sisseton bands. All shared a stylistic approach that mirrored the land that was of them and with them. The world as they saw it was deeply spiritual and filled with wonder. I call it that sense of awe. Their connection in place was one of connectedness, of being all my relations. There is a beautiful quote by a friend, Diane Wilson, from her book, Spirit Car. One day, I realized that my entire back seat was filled with relatives who wondered why I wasn't paying more attention to their part of the family story. Sooner or later, they all came up to the front seat and whispered stories in my ear. Our first piece of art is a beautiful cape, a woman's cape. And at first glance, what does one immediately notice? And I'm going to put my pointer on here so we can look at little pieces such as this. For me, the first thing that is definitely a noticeable piece is the fact that there are these teeny tiny beads. And these beads were thought of as colored seeds, and so hence their name as seed beads. They allowed Dakota women a great deal of flexibility to execute clan symbols or society symbols or visions that they would dream that reflected their worldview and made their dreaming imagery real. You'll notice that there is a beautiful sense of symmetry. Things are on each side, things line up here. And that everything is balanced. There is truly a sense of balancing and evenness and steadiness. Now, this cape is beaded in the round and the back complements the front. It's slightly different. I think what's really beautiful is the leaves and the flowers seem to dance across this cape, and the stars twinkle, and there's a great deal of activity and energy in how the pattern sort of floats across the cape. Seed beads were acquired by the French traders, from the French traders, and they actually replaced a more older tradition of using quill work. And quills were porcupine quills, and they were, well, acquired by gathering from the porcupine. My grandpa used to throw a blanket, and the porcupine would try to get out, and he'd whip the blanket off. The porcupine quills would be in the blanket. We'd go one way, the porcupine go in the other way. And they would be plucked. They are short, medium, and long. They would be soaked. They would be flattened by pulling through your teeth. They would then be dyed. The leather would be punctured with an awl, and then they would be pushed through. So an extremely long and laborious process, tedious, and requiring also great skill. The thing is that it was much, much, much more difficult to do this swirling pattern that we have seen with beadwork, because of course quills were straight. And though there are some who have acquired the sense of creating curves and bends, beadwork really allowed an artist to be much more fanciful in their approach. Now, from this cape, which is both a decorative piece as well as a utilitarian piece, we're going to move to our next Dakota object. Okay, this is a bowl, and it's made of maple burl and brass tacks. And you can see the brass tacks here, and there they are right there for the eyes, and they seem like they're glowing. Now, at first glance, you think, maybe eating, maybe forgiving. You know, this bowl says many things. I love this bowl. If it's ever missing from me, they will know who to go to. Bowls were used as containers for both food and for saving things, though those for saving would come much higher. This particular bowl was for eating. And I think what is most important to remember is, you know, today if we want a bowl or a dish or something of that nature for food, we go to our cabinets in the kitchen or the dining room, wherever we keep them. Back then, well, you brought your bowl with you. Everyone had their own bowl. And so, yes, if you didn't have a bowl, it was a little difficult to travel and eat. This particular bowl is quite large. I would say maybe 1.5 feet, 14 inches, 18 inches across, and maybe about 4 inches deep at the center. And well, you know, it seems to represent the fullness of the body of the animal. And as we see here, this beautiful effigy, so to speak, this symbol, we think this symbol is of a bear. And for Dakota people, the bear resembled a largeness, a powerfulness, a propensity to protect. And so for the artist to put this bear symbol, this effigy of a bear, is putting the spirit of the bear in the bowl. There seems to be, it's a transfer of all that the bear represents, is what we are thinking. You will notice that the orientation of the bear's head is to you. And so it's representing this, the giving of that energy associated with when food is being offered to you. Some think the bowl itself, because it is so large, was perhaps a bowl where one would share the food with several, and many people would partake from the same bowl. Not sure. It's just a thought. I think what I love about this piece is in its simplicity, the lines and of the bear's shape are very soft and very modern in the approach. And that sort of fills it with its own quiet beauty and of the movement. And it sort of makes one feel of that holding, as I would say, of and the comfort that food says when you are being offered food or when you are offering the food. Now, I think that when we go from two, in a sense, very traditional pieces, we come to this very modern piece, which is a photo. And as I have said, pictures can be deceiving when they're representing the past and the present. And so when I ask, what do you see? It bears to take a closer look here and in my two close-ups, but also here in the back. And so let's talk about that. The Mandaree powwow was shot in 1990 by a photographer by the name of Greta Pratt. Now, Greta had been on a project, a year-long project, throughout the Midwest to photograph fairs or gatherings. Now, a powwow to an outsider might be seen as a fun gathering. However, it could be an intertribal where many different nations gather. It can be a contesting powwow, which this one is, and you actually can see that with the numbers that are on several of the dancers. Or it can just be a ceremonial where outsiders would not have been allowed to view by a society. I think for Greta, she wanted to see how tradition and contemporary merged and came together. More often than not today, powwows are social gatherings for friends to see people and to connect with family members who actually will come in and they'll celebrate much of what the tradition of the people is through song, through dance, through food, and through your regalia. It's all very important to feeling connected, and even more so when prayers are said. Now, in the beginning of most intertribals, we do have the entrance of veterans, because veterans and those who go to war to fight for the people are truly honored. Now, more about that in a few minutes. When you look at these close-ups, you will notice the little girl here dancing in her dringle dress. You see a gentleman in his traditional regalia. And then you see this young person who is, yes, she's got her leggings on and looks like they're boots, not moccasins. And, but she's got a contesting number. So you've got this collusion almost as well, where people are fully dressed in their regalia, and those who are not necessarily, but they are dancing for themselves, for their family, for their spirits. You will note the American flag flying proudly. I mentioned earlier about how veterans are very important and well honored. And this has to do with the fact that for Native people, one who goes to fight for your land, for your people, that is the utmost that you can do. And for Native people, this flag really represents that we are the true Americans and that we are a vital, essential, integral part of this country. And we never forget that. And it sometimes can seem like a dichotomy to people, that Native people will be the first to sign up and go abroad to defend the land. But when you look at it as they're the original peoples, that makes total sense. Now, we move to the Anishnaabe, and we're going to look at a few pieces that reflect how the Anishnaabe, also called the Ojibwe, look at how they do and work with the art and how they look at things. The Anishnaabe are the Bois Forte, the Fond du Lac, the Grand Portage, the Leech Lake, the Mille Lacs, the White Earth, and the Red Lake. They share an emphasis of interpreting nature's beauty within the world they lived and worshiped in. And the designs make connections between the earth and the personal worldviews. It's important to note here that the Anishnaabe people, the Ojibwe, they came across the Great Lakes. They're originally from Eastern Canada. I am from the East Coast. My grandpa was Lenape. And so they came across and then down in to Minnesota. And so now are also part of the original story of who was here before the traders. And that happened in the early 1700s. As I did with the Dakota, I'm leaving a traditional Ojibwe saying, "You cannot destroy one who has dreamed a dream like mine." And this is all about the strength of the spirits. So first up, we have a wonderful doll. And I show this, but I also show a piece of the Dakota cape. And you will see we have these tiny beads. Here we go. Here are the tiny beads. However, notice how they're used very, very differently. Now, dolls for the Anishnaabe are used as teaching. They show how one traditionally dresses in the right way, how the clothes should be put on, how you would drape your bandolier bags, how you would tie your belts, the type of accessories you would wear. On this male doll, you see his leggings, and you see the beadwork around and up his leggings. They're open to mid-calf here. You see two bandolier bags that cross over with his belt that holds him in place. He has a throat piece, and then he has his hair tied in a traditional fashion that was in fashion in 1900. So, similarities. Well, in terms of beadwork, the similarities are these itty bitty teeny tiny seed beads. Again, it's for being able to do deeply intricate and complicated designs. However, here you see in the Dakota piece, you see that it is about visioning. On the bandolier, you can see that on the straps, they're done differently. Now, see this flower? I have seen this flower and these leaves, but particularly this little flower up north. Beautiful. It was when I was up visiting friends of mine up at Mille Lacs, and I kind of looked down and I noticed, I've seen that before. And I realized I had seen it on bandolier bags, and I had seen it on other pieces within our collection. So this is much more representational of what one sees. Here you have letters, R, S, T, U, V, W, right. So you can see this whole thing is about teaching and about learning in the right way how you should dress, how perhaps you might say your characters, how you might recognize your flowers. Everything on this is done for a reason. Now, we jump from something very representational to something that is very natural, but crosses the boundary into the spirit world, which I think is very important. This piece by George Morrison is a sculpture. And I know that when I have been with many on a tour at the museum, people look at it and they're like, well, okay, what is this? It just seems like it's there. Very beautiful. It's only maybe about 8 inches high. It's not very thick, maybe an inch, maybe. But it seems to vibrate when you see it. This is, when you look at this, you think about maybe, not quite sure where to place it. But with George Morrison, this is a sharinga, and a sharinga is an Aboriginal Australian sculptural piece. It represents family marks and spirits. And so it is something that is imbued deeply with the ancestors and the spirits. George, instead of being his piece of stone that he had seen, he has done it in wood found by Lake Superior, where he lived up north. And in a very clear nod to other things he has done, he has incorporated his spirit line, which I love. Going back here. He always has his horizon line, and you can see it very closely here. And that is almost a grounding for George, which I think is really interesting, because the horizon line comes and goes, and it does the vanishing. So it separates the above and the below. And my apologies for the zooming back and forth with these slides. What is most incredible here is he really shows the feeling of the wood and the character of the wood grain. He connects you to that natural element of wood, but in a sense where there is this constant moving, this sense of energy that actually a natural thing conveys. And so he has actually made that real in this form, and how he has shown this sharinga. Now, when I had jumped ahead, you will note that, I did a compare and contrast. How does this differ from the Dakota bowl? And so as we look at this, obviously the Dakota bowl is for eating, and it's a utilitarian piece, but it differs in that respect, but it also has a similarity because they're both imbued with spirit. Obviously, with the Dakota bowl, since it's for eating and for a specific use, it is the bear spirit that has been, for lack of a better term, it's now within the wood, where you have the Sharinga and you have the spirits of the ancestors and your actual family are within this shape of the Sharinga. So looking at those, we jump to something that's very modern. And you had seen a flash of this a few moments ago. Well, this is a screen print, a colored screen print. And so it definitely is firmly within the modernist tradition. It's very expressive. There are some elements that you can see. It's called Red Eagle, and it's by Alex Janvier, who's Canadian. And one would say perhaps cousins to the Anishnaabe, being Cold Lake First Nations, Dene, and Saulteaux. I pose the point of, if it looks like an eagle, why do you think so? Why do you believe that? And obviously, we see that he has placed an eagle within this seeming wing. This piece really dances. It swoops, it dives. It looks like it's constantly moving. It literally is in your face, and you can feel that power, that energy, that gutsiness that eagles have. You also feel the gracefulness and the silence that an eagle will have. And I think that's really important, because as a modern piece, the representation has become very abstracted. It's become very minimal, where it's more about the feeling. Now, that being said, I think what's interesting about Alex's work is he speaks to how he looked to beadwork from his First Nations community. And, you know, at first thought, I thought, beadwork. I was trying to think about how that was, but then I looked at how this is, and how the swooping is, and how there would be certain kinds of detailing in here and in here. When we looked before at the Dakota piece and we saw visioning, and even when we looked at the Anishnaabe work, where we saw the flowers, and here I'm going to point to this feather image, and here you've got feathers, and you see here the markings and the fish that was most likely caught. You can really see the fish head here. You really see how with him, he captured what was around him and what the eagle would have seen, and all of those pieces that were clearly identifiable, but then he literally abstracted them so that they became more of a pattern versus the actual drawing of a leaf. And so he, in his words, drew upon his admiration for Kandinsky and for Klee in terms of those modernist artists. The print is very audacious. It's not very large, but it is definitely catches your eye because the colors are so bright. They're so vibrant. They seem to vibrate that you feel it. You feel that energy of the eagle. And it's a great piece. It's one that makes me smile when I see it. And I actually think about, when I was sitting in front, I think about the eagles that I see over on the river and how they swoop and literally float. And you definitely feel that in his piece. What you're seeing here is when you go to MIA, which I hope you do soon. MIA is open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Time tickets, and it is free for all. When you enter the Americas galleries, the Dakota and Anishnaabe art is to the left. And I'm going to show two views of that so that you could see. Right here is on the wall is Morrison's wood paintings, as he would call them. And you can see, as with the Sharinga, his horizon line that went all the way across and then just goes off. You can see Alex's piece here. George's very small Sharinga, and there's the doll. There's also a beautiful bag, woman's bag, and then there is a war club. And this focuses primarily on the Anishnaabe. On the other side, when you turn your head, still on the left, you have our fabulous bowl, and you can really now see the context that it is quite significant, this bowl. You see the cradle, and here you really can see that this piece is of quill work that we spoke of earlier, but it is edged with beadwork. And then we have a beautiful pipe bag, which is beadwork and feathers and yarn, very elegant. And this piece is actually by one of our neighbors, Ho Chunk, and is a very contemporary piece. So in closing, it's been my pleasure to present this tour of Minnesota's Dakota and Anishnaabe peoples. It's one of our first virtual tours, and hopefully it introduced you to a few of the interrelationships that these peoples artistically used and showed spirit and nature, and both the past and the present, and the traditional and the modern. I really do hope that it sparked your interest to explore more of what these galleries are. There are several rooms, and they are split up into the Southwest. We have both pottery, and we have a beautiful turquoise group. We have the Southeast. We have actually some beautiful work from our neighbors to the south in Mesoamerican Mexico, and we have plains. And we also have those neighbors who are in the Northeast and the far north. I really hope that you come, and I welcome you to visit soon and often. And I leave you with a phrase of my people, Wanishi, may the way be beautiful for you. Have a great day today.